Almost.
How you doing, mate?
Good.
All lights on you.
All lights on me.
When was the last time you saw your rainbow? It was like 2 years ago now?
Nah, not that
Yeah,
long.
really?
I think it's been like a year now. Yeah, since you were just before you went to Milan.
What was it? I thought it was the party, but no.
Yeah, I came to that, but I think I met you in a coffee shop out.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Stuff
just
like
before
that.
you moved to Italy.
Cool. Do you want to give a bit of context about your background and what you do?
Yeah.
Introduce yourself?
So I've been in marketing for the last 8 years, focusing on kind of content, social media, and leaning more into strategy. So helping brands basically connect the dots between their business goals and what they can do to achieve that through content. So pretty much started out with SEO, digital marketing, understanding how businesses can utilize content to rank for first page of Google, PPC ads, social media ads, and then leaned more into social from the creative side. From that, kind of just started developing, understanding culture kind of beneath the content. What really drives awareness, what helps brands really get on the front foot using content. And then from there, really just spiraled into moving around different brands, working for Unilever, VO5, Tresemme, Snapchat, pretty much helping them construct that architecture of building the teams out on social media, and what they can do to basically achieve any kind of challenges they're facing. I think how people engage with content is going to change drastically, and who those people are and those connections and how they do it on platforms. When you kind of look at holistically, you have to match the data and analytics as well as the creative side.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand. You can have all the data in the world, you can have all the analytics in the world, best systems, best practices, but if the content's not creative enough, it's not really touching the consumer that you want and not really creating an emotional feeling on the back of it, it's not going to drive those results. You know, you can have the highest impression rates, the highest engagement rates, but if it's not achieving what you set out to do, then it's a bit pointless. You're just basically pumping resource and money into something that's not driving either the business bottom line, which is basically sales, top funnel awareness, so brand awareness, engagement, really getting that emotional connection between the brand and the actual user, which is typically in real life events, a bit more creative side in terms of pulling that user in more to the brand after they've kind of been aware to it.
Yeah.
So it's effectively, you can use social at every stage of the funnel.
How does that change then for a luxury brand? So, you know, if we look at, let's use fast fashion as an example, it's very conversional, it's very, I don't want to say clickbait, but it's like, it's impulsive. I'm going to look at something, I'm not going to think about it, whereas a luxury brand, although your audience is going to be segmented and you're really going to look into those buying behaviours, it might be more considered. How does that change then from a content or a brand's perspective? How do you really get them to not act impulsively, but get someone who's you'd like to think was quite considered to go and purchase something almost like that?
When you're looking at content as a whole, you have to start with strategy, market research, understand who your consumer is, really drive into the pressure points. If you just react to trends, you just become a meme company effectively.
Yeah.
It's just jumping on trend every week.
So many of them now.
And reactiveness is great when you're not doing the reactiveness. You know, you've got a content plan, you've got a strategy, you've got your content pillars, and those content pillars are driving different ends of the business, different connections and touch points for the user. And then you see a trend that connects to the brand. That's when you jump on it. You don't need to jump on every trend because it's not you. And I think a lot of businesses forget that. It's like, oh, this is going viral on TikTok. Yeah, it's going viral, but are those consumers on the other end who are engaging with that content actually fit the purpose of what you want?
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get drawn into, there's some easy likes there, there's a really easy win for me, or as a company to go, oh, I'm going to react to this. But long term, what is your end goal? And again, it's like you mentioned before, we're looking for like exposure, or we're looking for conversions? Are we actually going to sell the products from doing this?
Yeah.
How does it affect our brand image? And I think it's very easy to forget that and just go for vanity metrics.
Always. And, you know, if you don't have a strategy in place, I effectively always kind of put this in a way of like you're just watering mud in your garden because you don't know where the seeds are. So you're just going out, pushing content constantly, but how's it going to grow? If you actually took the time to plant those seeds, give it space, give it sunlight, and then go out and water it, that plant's going to actually grow over time and actually become something, right? But a lot of brands just push out content, push out stuff, and you know, there's always an argument of quality and quantity. And if you're kind of playing the organic game, then quantity does give you more impressions. You know, you post more, you're going to get more metrics on that. But it doesn't mean it's going to push the business goals that you really want to achieve or push the brand forward. And you know, talking to big brands, people who are heading, you know, big brands, big in global conglomerates, big global brands, they don't focus on the vanity metrics. Impressions, engagements, clicks go out the window. They couldn't care less. What they're focusing is on the customer experience. Their number one goal is achieving NPS scores.
Elon Musk is the prime example for that. I can't remember what he called it, but he had a primary goal basically, and that his only primary goal was to improve customer experience.
Right.
And if he was making a decision, he would ask himself, does this improve customer experience? And if it didn't, then it got put to the wayside. So that's really interesting what you say there, because it is very, very easy to look at, let's use that analogy of the patch of mud for an example and say, this patch is getting loads of likes, and almost trying to copy and replicate what they do, and it not working on your patch because it doesn't fit your brand.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of attention, but there's no seed planted, so it's not really going to grow into anything.
Yeah, I love that one a lot.
When you look at the biggest brands, you look at Amazon, you look at Apple, you look at Tesla, right? All of these big brands that people jump and latch on to, especially early adopters and then the masses, their number one goal that they've kind of focused on has always been customer experience. Apple can put any price on their product. People don't really react to it, whether it's a subscription, whether it's a product, whether it's once you get into the ecosystem, it's hard to get out. But people go and visit the store for the experience. They use that item, which ultimately has become a luxury item on the higher end, but also it drives the demand of everyday users as well on the lower end, or the mid-market kind of products. So it gives a bit best of both worlds, but what they're really good at is really connecting with the user and understanding their needs before they actually offer a product. So it's taking time to spend an hour or 2 hours understanding what that customer needs before they go, right, this is, you need an Apple MacBook Pro. You need a Pro with more RAM because you do this, that, and that. Or actually, you don't need that. You need a MacBook Air because you're not going to use it. What's the point wasting money?
Yeah. I guess it's working backwards from that data, isn't it? And then they're offering products based on those segments. Because if you look at, you've got the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and you've got products which are different price points, not really offering a too dissimilar product, but they're just marketed in a completely different way.
Yeah, totally. And when if we kind of focus on the luxury sector, what they're using social at the moment is really to unlock the new generation, right? That is where their attention is. Their attention is not on TV, newspaper. I can't remember the last time I picked up a newspaper. But their attention has been shifted. They're not on the tube picking up the FT every morning before they walk into Canary Wharf, right? They're on their phones, on Twitter, on Instagram, looking at travel, finance, whatever, where their attention sits. And they're spending hours every single day on social platforms to get their news, get their entertainment, get their engagement, connect with friends, family. So if you're not on those platforms, you're never going to get that new generation. We've probably seen a shift where there is a desire for a new platform. Our parents and maybe older relatives have jumped on Facebook and then jumped on Instagram, jumped on these platforms that we were kind of early adopters for. And then once you're, other family and relatives, so it becomes less exclusive for people who are driving the change and want something new and innovative. And I think that's where we possibly might see over the next couple of years that shift to a new platform, whether that's, you know, a larger ecosystem of what social does, in incorporating payments, daily chat, your content, your news, ordering a cab or Uber, all through one sort of platform.
Do you think AI is going to play a part in that? I mean, it's unavoidable at the moment. We've talked about it extent every day, really. Where do you think that comes into play with social media? Do you think it has a part in our daily lives? Yeah, where do you see that heading in the next kind of 5 years?
I think it's interesting. I mean, recently we've kind of seen Elon Musk put out this, you know, petition amongst tech leaders to pause, because we haven't essentially done the human rights part of understanding the ethics, what is going to transpire in terms of where we're getting this data from, how is this data being used, and how can it be manipulated. And over the last few years, we've kind of seen top execs from the AI industry, especially at Google, Microsoft, who've been working on these programs, quit their jobs because, you know, not just from an environmental point of view, where we're using a lot of energy to run these huge supercomputers to actually run the algorithms and data, but also from an ethical point of view, that we're in this period of brands and companies focusing on growth and profit. It becomes very dangerous because people start cutting corners. They stop the ethical side. You know, they will try and find an ingredient or portion of the business that they can get for a little bit cheaper, but it lacks the quality. And that could be represented the same way once you look at tech and AI as well. It's like, what corners are we cutting at the moment to drive this huge reach and ambition of where this is going, rather than stepping back and going, actually, is this beneficial for us? Most likely yes, because we can't slow down tech. However, what are the parameters where we don't start endangering not just ourselves, but the environment, human lives? Because it's going to create a huge disproportion between who can access this and who can't. You know, there's already rumors spiraling around that ChatGPT is only 20% of what we see and 80% is behind closed doors. So if your mind's blown at 20%, what's actually behind those doors?
I also think again, a rumor as to potentially why Elon bought Twitter, but to have an unfiltered, access to all the data that we're pushing out.
Yeah.
That's invaluable. Data really has become incredible
commodity. Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at the aspirations of what Elon actually wants to drive, I think you can't take that into he's trying to level the playing field. You got to take everything with a bit of pinch of salt, because ultimately he does want to create a super app. He knows blockchain is going to be a huge fundamental driving that. Imagine having everyone talk on Twitter in the whole world. That data is undeniable of what you can do with it. So as much as, yes, he's arguing free speech and you can be left and you can be right and you can say what you want, and there's got to be some transparency. Obviously, we've seen with the Twitter files that it hasn't been run like that, especially with politicians, FBI, government being involved very heavily, walking around offices, banning people left, right and centre. It's good that there's been a cleanse, and it sheds some light that, these companies don't need thousands of employees to be run sitting around being middle managers. And we're seeing that with the impact of huge tech companies basically making a lot of people redundant, making businesses lean. But there's also that, what is it ultimately going to be useful? How is it actually going to drive change? Is it going to be beneficial? And how's that going to change content effectively? And I think with the advancement of AI, ChatGPT, Midjourney, it's crazy how fast you can turn around content or an idea or inception. We're not far off it being the same high quality of content and creative conceptualization of someone who spent 30, 60, 100 hours on Photoshop creating the same thing. Midjourney can do that in 5 seconds. So I think there's going to be a lot of resource unraveled using these tech if you're smart to adapt to it. I was just going to point out, I was listening to a podcast, All In, with Chamath and a lot of some of the investors there, and they were kind of mentioning that tech's always going to come around and it's always going to frighten those people who aren't willing to change, right? And they raised a good example of before Photoshop, graphic designers used to go in and edit pixel by pixel because the software didn't allow you to do a whole filter around the image, right? They would go in pixel by pixel and adjust the exposure, right, to get that, what we use Photoshop effectively with filters today, because the software wasn't there. And now all of a sudden, everyone's kind of, well, it's just going to wipe out creatives totally because you can just create a Photoshop image which would take hours and a couple of seconds just with prompts of text and language and even visual prompts. So yeah, it's going to speed up things and people are going to lose their jobs, especially if they're not open to change. But effectively, time is the biggest resource. So if we can get time back, then we can do other stuff and really advance other aspects of the business or everything else. You have to adapt and you have to change in any industry, and I think if we always stayed the same, technology stayed the same, we would be concerned. So this is just, we've just taken a massive leap. What people don't realise is ChatGPT's been in the works for years now. Yeah, I mean, Elon funded it, right? It started off as a charity. He had no ownership. He kind of lent them a few million to get this going. And now all of a sudden Microsoft has come in and sort of bought them out and privatized it in essence. And when you got Bill Gates coming out saying this is more revolutionary than the microchip and the phone, I think you have to kind of stop and go, wait, what? You got to pay attention if you think how revolutionary the mobile phone is. People are glued to it, right? There's studies shown that kids are more anxious around losing their phone than anything else in their life, right? They're not worried about losing job or getting a job. They're not worried about school. They're not worried about university. They're probably not even worried about death in some instance compared to losing their iPhone. Yeah, I can't remember the podcast now exactly. Joe Rogan, he's talking something. They're talking about the chip. It might have even been Elon actually. We're effectively cyborg already. Yeah. If you lose your phone, you feel like you've lost a limb. I mean, you just got to take your iPhone and stick it to your side of the head. We almost can't live without. We walk out the door and we go, right, wallet, keys, phone. But essentially in a few years we might just need a phone, and then after that we won't need a phone because it will already be part of the human genetic and DNA. Which is interesting because I was thinking this morning about technology echoes. Because Google Lenses were around, 8 years ago now, 7, 8 years ago? Quite a long time ago, yeah. Incredible bit of tech. We were just too early to understand it, appreciate it. And then you look at VR and cross reality, and okay, metaverse might have been outshadowed by AI, but I think it's still really relevant, and that technology is... I think you have to go into the company accounts of Facebook and look at their financials and how many billions they're pouring each month into AR and VR, and go, wait, why are they spending 23 billion on market research just for VR and AR? I think they will be the first sort of platform to leverage what they already do in terms of attention and awareness for brands to basically come in with their ads and a platform to play. And it's always been a platform to play. I think people are not aware that organic doesn't exist on social media. There is no such thing as organic, right? You reach 1% of your followers. What you do with one post and push it through spend will do more than what you can do with a year just with organic. So it's always been a pay-to-play platform effectively. And you have to be aware of what you're entering, especially as a brand, what the competition is, because most of the big brands will outspend you in a single hour, if not minute, and you're just getting the bottom pile of that attention scrap, right? So you have to be wise with how you spend money as a brand, but at the same time, you can't be naive to think we're going to go viral and we're going to lift off to the skies. And yeah, you get these ad hoc instances where you do get that viral, but what you should be looking at is social as a lens. not every brand needs brand awareness through social media. Not every brand needs to push their product through Instagram and ads, and they're basically basket and shop. But what you have to understand is that social drives culture. Yeah. And I think if you can unlock the culture part, it's a lot easier to unlock everything else.
If you stay consistent, your following will grow. It will grow organically too. You just have to stick with it. I think a lot of people
Absolutely.
get to that hockey stick
Mm-hmm.
kind of graph and get to that point where they've grown, 1,000, maybe 2,000 followers, and then they're just about to have that kind of, I guess, cumulative increase,
Mm-hmm.
and they quit.
Yeah.
They drop off.
Yeah.
You've seen that quite frequently, or?
I think people quit a lot earlier than that.
Yeah.
And again, vanity metrics.
Yeah.
People rather report on, we've gained 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 followers. And I understand it's a tool, but those followers can disappear tomorrow. Yeah. And most of it's 10, 20% bots either way.
Yeah, of course.
And it's not the user. It's not the user that you really want to capture and captivate. That's really going to drive that word of mouth off the platform, because that's the real, key to growing in terms of that. Is people talking off the platform, sharing it amongst friends, family. That's where you get brand awareness. That is, you can't buy that.
For me, that feels like it's going to come back around in a technology echo, because a lot of people couldn't grasp the concept of NFTs. It was unfathomable for some people to understand it, and you either got it or you didn't, and it was like Marmite. But I just feel like it was maybe 5 years too early.
No.
I just feel that. No, I feel it just came at the right time.
It's not the right time. It's evolution of
Okay.
product and brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at brands and you look at the typical business model, you always got the early adopters, and once you get to the top, you already got the mass, and it's how long you can sustain that growth at the top. Otherwise, you start going down the bell curve, and it's the last people to jump on, and you pretty much die. We are that first 25%. What we've seen in the last few years, we are the early adopters.
What does that mean then for the likes of blockchain, Web3? Is crypto still in its infancy? Is it worth?
Yeah, I don't think it's even started yet. I think.
Let's go and buy some Bitcoin.
No, I don't think that's the right way to look at it. Last few years, if you look at the last 10 years of the S&P markets and stocks, we've been in this non-stop acceleration to the top, and we've created this mindset that it's non-stop growth, non-stop profit. You just throw in some cash into the S&P and we're going to make money. But what you're doing is, all you've got is speculative interest that I don't have to work for this. I just put some money in and I'm going to get some money out at the end of it. And what the technology has done with blockchain, and let's take the cryptocurrencies, is taken that aspect of 10 years of growth and squeezed it into about an hour, where you've got 100, 200, 800, 1,000, 10,000% gains, and then come back rocketing down again. So the value isn't there yet. I think we kind of judge and criticize the technology, and especially what we see in the front, which is the cryptocurrency. But the only reason people are kind of investing in it is because of the speculative of making money, rather than what does this technology actually enable us to do.
Yeah, decentralization.
Right. When was the last time you went on your app and cared about what HSBC code and banking they use and what sort of software they use? Never, right? It's the friction and non-frictionness. All you care is about utility and how much ease it brings to your day. I can send money from here to there and it's gone instantly, whether you're using PayPal, HSBC. What most people don't realize is that that transaction's gone through, but it's actually going to take 2 or 3 days for that money to actually be moved, right?
Yeah, of course.
But HSBC knows it's going to be moved, so they're going to send it to appear on a number on the other end by the time it catches up in real terms. Blockchain's basically accelerated to do instant, whether it takes an hour, a couple minutes, a couple hours. They're taking that 2 or 3 days latency and actually sped it up to actually sending it.
That's not the minimum, right?
Yeah, it cuts out the middleman, and all of a sudden it doesn't matter whether it's the US dollar, the UK pound, European euro, it's one sort of currency. And I think once we start losing the friction of, oh, it's built on this and it's built on that, the user doesn't care what it's built on. It doesn't matter what blockchain you've used. Because we're at that early adoption, people are nitpicking and trying to find bugs. Oh, you're not using Bitcoin, you're not using Ethereum.
Of course.
But on the back end, that's the back end. A user doesn't care whether it's Ethereum, it's that. They just want to do bang transaction, bang bought that, bang that's bringing value into my life. Yeah. The app has to be there. And I think Web3 companies have to focus on the utility, the user experience, and the blockchain and cryptocurrencies can be on the back end. The user doesn't need to know all that. And at the moment, we're focusing on that side and forgetting the front.
It is interesting how we use banking systems every day, but don't
actually understand how they work.
Or understand what those banks are based on, and especially in America, which is primarily debt.
Yeah.
And as we know at the moment, it's probably a bit of a touchy subject, but the BRICS.
Yeah, we've kind of recently seen the reverse of the US dollar, and I think it'd be interesting to look back in a year, 2, 5 years of how that's played out, right?
Yeah, it would be.
You know, if we're looking at what's happened in the last few weeks of the Middle East cutting oil production to put pressure on inflation on oil, right? Make a prediction. I don't I don't want to be called out on this, but I think a lot of people have to realize that globalization's going to be different. I think we're going to have micro economies, micro businesses working together seamlessly. So you're not going to see the blockchain, you're not going to see the cryptocurrencies, you're just going to be in that environment that you want to be in. And the technology should really be seamless. There's no friction. It shouldn't matter what the price of that stable coin, you know, that cryptocurrency or that tech. It just should be seamless. Look at Prada, look at Hennessy, what they're doing with their NFT launches. They're playing on the sidelines. It's not your billboard campaign, it's not your TV advert that they're doing it. They're deep, you know, getting deep in the culture and understanding, hey, the new generation Z is going to make up most of the market in the next 5 years. You know, what we're seeing at the moment is this new rich coming through fruition through Instagram.
Okay.
They're inheriting their parents' money, which have been mostly in alternative assets, real estate, but they don't want to do that. Okay, they might use the same techniques to make money, but they're also experimenting in cryptocurrencies, blockchains. They're putting their money in NFTs, they're putting their money in other things that haven't been around for their parents, right? They want different. They don't want to live like their parents. And I think you have to understand the consumer shift happening at the culture level of the new rich, that top 5%, the top 1%. They don't want this huge mansion in south of France. They want to be living in the city of New York. They want to be living in the city of London because it's fast-paced, it's this, it's that, the other.
In a beach, South America.
Right, they're still going to have 20 homes around the world, but the way they do business and the way they interact with technology is completely different to what their parents have had to deal with.
I don't find anyone I've come across is like, yeah, I just casually, you know, put 10 grand in Bitcoin. It's like, no, I'm invested.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching it, I'm there. You wouldn't get that with somebody in, you know, 10 years ago or 20 years ago that invested in IBM.
Right.
I'm super into IBM right now.
Or Coca-Cola.
It does what it wants, you know. So,
yeah.
In a way, the optics behind personal image just as important as the investments they're making? You know, to be seen to investing is, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you have to look at it twofold. You've got NFTs and the value of NFTs. And then you've got to look at personal image and personal branding, which is, you know, effectively the creative economy is going to be as huge as these tech platforms out there. And brands won't need to have their own, they'll have their brand, but they don't need to go and push their brand out. They can push it through creators, influencers, different types of influencers to help push their brand because they've got the connection with the user. Before it used to be the brand People would walk into a store and that was their connection to the brand. They would go and purchase a product and that was where they were getting their information, engagement and brand connection. Now it's these influencers which are touching the user and making those relationships less about the brand. But the influencer goes, buys a Louis Vuitton handbag. All of their followers, not all of their followers, but their followers are now going, wait, what? If they got that, I want that, because I want to live like them.
Money make you effect.
And that is the connection to the brand, effectively, right? Yeah. It's perception and how you're seen, as well as what you hold and value.
Yeah.
We're looking at startups. They got to understand that they've got a community, effectively, and whether that's going to have product market fit to then turn into a business. And it can start either way. You can start with the community or you can start with the product. I think if you have both, then you're more likely to succeed in that area. If you just have one or the other, you're gonna kind of have to build the other to attain the benefits of each other. Because effectively, 100, 300, 500, depending on the price point. People who use it every day has a connection to the brand. You've got that culture. Is a lot more useful than 10,000 random people who downloaded your app once, been to your website once, viewed your product once, and they disappear into the ether. Having 100 customers that come back every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, because they have that personal connection with the brand, is a lot more useful than 10,000 or getting 20, 50,000 people to see it, because there's no connection.
Yeah.
And then it comes into, right, we've got that community, you're understanding what works, what doesn't work, feedback, tweaking it, getting to that stage where you can actually start scaling. And then you've got that product market fit to go, right, we can scale this because we know it works. And then you start reaching out to a wider audience, a bigger circle and a bigger circle, till you start hitting ceilings to understand what is the actual realm of that community that you can basically bring on. And it's different to established brands because they've kind of already done that, right?
They've got community base and they've got their high intent customer, haven't they? Yeah, that's,
They've got their community that's been there for the last 20 years, for example, and they've got a product that's already been selling for the last 20 years. But how does that work for the next 5 years? How does that work for the next 10 years? Is your consumer going to change? I think we're going into this period and it's kind of been talked about in the last few years of aging population, people not having enough kids, therefore the same amount of people are not going to be taxed and feed into pension funds and feed into these people who are getting nearer to retirement. Because at the moment we're kind of peak population of the world, right? There's only a few countries in the world like India and other countries which are still rising population. But if we look at the West, we look at China, they've got a decrease in population. So effectively there's going to be less tax coming into governments, less people in the population, less people to do those jobs. So there's a need of technology like AI to come in all of a sudden, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which helps.
Yeah.
But effectively that's why we've kind of had this surge of, lowest unemployment since, stats have kind of started, finding the right people with skills. We've gone off on a tangent.
No, it makes sense, and I think to tie it back to brands, effectively what we're
established
saying
brands, right?
Is there's almost going to be less people to, there's less customers. There's going to be people are going to be making more informed decisions.
Yeah, definitely more informed decisions.
We look at again crypto. It's going to be people are going to have so many different options, different ways to pay. You think now you've got cash and you've got bank card or you've got credit.
Yeah.
But they're kind of all the same thing in a way. But now you have blockchain, or you might have NFTs. They might have several different ways to pay, and you might just have to ask your AI to do it for you.
Yeah, of course. Tech's going to help those businesses. I think if we loop back to established businesses, it's planting those seeds for the next generation, right? Does technology play a hand into the product and community effectively? This aging population is going to disappear with the brand that you have. They're not going to their focus in life is going to shift. And you've got a new generation coming, you know, you could call them the tablet generation. You know, you're seeing kids and babies holding tablets and mobile phones, which is mental. Where we were brought up with dial-up internet, it's completely different. And, you know, it's this alpha generation that people are going to have to start planning in the next few years.
I think we have to mention Virgil as well. When you're talking about that brand, I just, you know, he's an absolute goat of mine. What he did with Louis Vuitton and really introduced it to that new generation of, I guess, millennials. And
right,
generation Z, like you said. Rest in peace. What a guy. But yeah, it's unprecedented times for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your insight. Thank you for being the first guest.
Awesome.
Good to see you, man.
Pleasure.
Thank you, man. You did really well. I just looking at the time, we're on like 42 minutes. Crazy. I was like,